All right, let's dive right into this explainer covering the absolute wild ride of a master thief named Clay. We're going to recount this incredible story from beginning to end, a complete narrative of how someone successfully breached a totally unbeatable dungeon and somehow ended up on its payroll. It's a crazy story of survival, hidden game-like mechanics, and honestly, one of the most unexpected career pivots you will ever hear about.
So, our story begins with Clay. For 3 long years, she's been desperately searching for her missing father, an elite explorer who just vanished into the seemingly bottomless depths of the Antomir dungeon. She pushes further than anyone else ever has, making it all the way down to the unexplored 8th floor. There, she faces this grueling floor guardian. She's backed into a corner, puts literally everything she has into one final desperate strike, and accidentally smashes right through the dungeon wall itself. Seriously, what actually happens when you beat an unbeatable dungeon? Well, apparently the literal walls come down.
You'd think behind that crumbled stone wall, Clay would be bracing for some kind of horrifying, ultra-boss monster, right? Nope. Instead, she finds what looks like a super cozy hotel room. And sitting inside is a young girl named Bella, who turns out to be the dungeon administrator. Bella doesn't attack, she doesn't call for guards, she just looks at Clay, realizes she survived all the way to the 8th floor completely solo, and super casually offers her a job, right there on the spot.
Now, Clay isn't exactly the type to just hand over her life to a total stranger. Assuming her father made it to the absolute bottom, the legendary 10th floor, she wages her freedom on a duel. She wants to test if Bella was actually the one who defeated him. But man, the moment Clay challenges her, Bella just casually points her staff and unleashes this catastrophic, overwhelming storm of magic. Magic so strong that even Clay's legendary father couldn't have survived it. 12 hours later, Clay wakes up in a super comfortable bed on the hidden 11th floor, fully and officially hired as dungeon staff.
This kicks off a massive paradigm shift for her. Almost overnight, Explorer Clay has to completely adapt. I mean, she goes from being this intensely paranoid lone wolf who literally sleeps with one eye open to a dungeon staff employee suddenly thrust into a cooperative workspace. She's learning the day-to-day operations of managing a deadly labyrinth, and she's doing it right alongside the exact same terrifying creatures she used to hunt. During her onboarding, Bella drops the dungeon's greatest secret. The monsters here, they never actually die. The dungeon uses these things called magic gems to create temporary physical bodies for them. So when an explorer strikes a monster down, the copy just shatters, and the monster's true consciousness is safely zipped right back to the staff break room. Basically, for the monsters, this horrifying labyrinth is essentially a low-risk 9-to-5 job. Clay's very first official task is honestly like a workplace comedy of errors. She has to refill the treasure chests on the upper floors. To outpace the dungeon's permanently cranky dwarf blacksmith, Ruard, Clay puts her elite agility to work. She completely ignores the stairs, doing extreme parkour to just jump straight down the dungeon's massive central well. She grabs the loot, sneaks right past the amateur adventurers completely undetected, and manages to restock the chests way faster than the dungeon staff can even comprehend.
After that, Bella decides Clay needs some hands-on combat training if she's ever going to handle 10th floor entities. So using this wild enchanted mirror magic, Bella temporarily transfers Clay's consciousness into a skeleton monster up on the 7th floor. Guided by a spirit named Krates, Clay just effortlessly wipes the floor with a top-ranked explorer party known as the Ice Wolf's Fangs. Using literally nothing but a rusty sword, she channels raw magical power to slice cleanly through their spells, leaving Krates completely mind-blown by her actual strength.
But here's where the world building gets really crazy. The dungeon's influence goes way beyond its own walls. Bella takes Clay through a teleportation circle that drops him straight into the capital city, right into the basement of Clay's very own Thieves Guild. It turns out the dungeon actually created the guild. Years ago, the previous administrator set up a massive orchestrated massacre just to establish a training pipeline. They actively educate explorers so they won't just blindly die to early-level traps.
Back at work, Clay's training shifts to the monster arena, where she has to spar with an unbelievably powerful dragon named Realmon. In the heat of this super high-speed fight, Clay organically figures something out. She learns how to take pure magical power, which is usually an internal force strictly reserved for casting spells, and channel it directly into her physical limbs. This drastically boosts her speed and strength, to the point where she's literally parrying a dragon bare-handed.
But despite how epic that clash sounds, it ends up being hilarious. Clay actually loses an arm on her temporary body, But Riemann suddenly just throws his hands up, calls for a timeout, and yields. Why? He admits he just really hates feeling pain. It's this great moment where Clay realizes that beneath all their terrifying aesthetics, these boss monsters are just regular employees who want to clock out at the end of their shift without getting a headache.
Not long after, Bella ropes Clay into some HR duties, specifically conducting job interviews. Because they're super short-staffed on high-level monsters, Bella sets up a summoning circle to bring applicants directly from the demon world into the 10th floor boss room. It's quite the lineup. They interview a massive cat, a towering giant, and this totally bizarre creature that barely even speaks their language.
Well, things take a super deadly turn when an uninvited guest crashes the interview process. A totally ruthless demon named Helland steps out of the summoning circle and proudly announces that he actually murdered the real candidate just to take his spot in line. Helland isn't there for dental benefits or a salary. He's figured out the dungeon's secret and is there to steal their precious, life-saving magic gems.
Helland really thinks he's the apex predator in the room. But the absolute second he threatens Bella, Clay blitzes him. Using that new magical speed she mastered, she incapacitates him before he can even blink. And Bella? She's the ultimate pragmatic administrator. She decides not to waste a perfectly good intruder, so she literally recycles his body, turning him into a mindless zombie employee just to mop the early floors. Talk about a tough interview.
Seeing how quick on her feet Clay is, Bella hands her a massive new project, remodeling the entirely outdated 5th floor. This is where Clay's background really shines. She applies her deep, ingrained explorer paranoia to design a totally brutal map layout, just packed with blind corners and nasty traps. To build it, chaotic elemental spirits carve out the earth, Ruard refines all the stonework, and specialized source slimes are brought in to clean up all the construction debris.
And speaking of those slimes, during the remodel, Clay learns another crazy detail about the dungeon's ecosystem. You know those iconic, low-level dungeon slimes you see everywhere? They aren't actually there to fight explorers. Nope, they are essentially just magical janitors. They're totally non-combative monsters made entirely of magical power, placed on the upper floors for the sole purpose of dissolving explorer corpses so the dungeon doesn't smell terrible.
Just as Clay is settling into this totally weird new normal, Prince Lubrin suddenly takes the kingdom's throne. And his first order of business? He invokes this ancient contract, challenging Bella to a royal duel. The stakes are huge. If he wins, the kingdom completely seizes the dungeon's wealth and strips the entire town of Antimeric of its self-governance.
So, Bella brings Clay along to the royal castle, making her dress up as a maid just to keep a low profile. The king arrogantly lines up his absolute strongest knights and magicians. The duel starts, and the knights rush in, but here's the thing. Bella doesn't even bother using her overwhelming magic. Relying on sheer physical prowess alone, she humbles the kingdom's elite, just beating them down with blunt strikes from her staff. In exactly 10 seconds flat, the kingdom's absolute greatest warriors are completely crushed.
Desperate, humiliated, and out of options, King Lugrin attempts a super cowardly hostage play. He draws his blade on Clay, thinking she's just some helpless maid, and threatens her life if Bella doesn't surrender. But Bella? She doesn't even flinch. Instead, she casually yet absolutely terrifyingly threatens to just wipe the king and his entire castle completely off the map. Realizing he's vastly outmatched, the king drops his weapon and surrenders.
Before they leave the castle, the defeated king, who is very clearly already plotting some kind of future revenge, demands Clay's name. Knowing exactly how these royal investigations work from her time in the Thieves Guild, Clay makes sure to protect her true identity. She stares the king dead in the eye and brilliantly gives him a completely fake alias, Wrongguard.
Returning victorious to the dungeon, Clay has this really profound moment. She watches Bella happily wandering the halls and notices just how comfortable everything feels. To the outside world, this place is a brutal, deadly labyrinth. But to Bella, who is literally raised here by the previous administrator, this isn't just a business, and it's not just a workplace. It's her actual childhood house. It's a bizarre, monster-filled, yet deeply comforting home.
For a moment, Clay finally feels like she actually belongs here, but that peace is abruptly shattered. While she's hanging out in the Monster Lounge, some goblins start gossiping about her missing father. They refer to him as the Wind Slicer, calling him this terrifying explorer notorious for instantly killing monsters with thrown knives. But wait, this completely contradicts Clay's memories. She distinctly remembers her father as a martial artist who strictly fought up close with his fists and was totally against using throwing weapons.
That one glaring contradiction fuels a massive new fire inside Clay. Did she misremember her own dad?
Was he secretly hiding his true fighting style all along? Determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, she strikes a deal with Bella. Now, on her days off, she equips her custom dwarven armor, steps out of the safe zones, and aggressively explores the terrifying 9th floor to hunt down the truth.
And that is exactly where we leave this story. As she expertly balances her completely bizarre new life, managing janitorial slimes, chatting with dragons, and remodeling death traps, one massive burning question remains. Will Clay ever piece together the clues to uncover the ultimate, true fate of her father in the absolute darkest depths of Antomurg? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always keep questioning the labyrinth.